Captain Lisa Ward stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge watching the stars drift past through the massive viewport. The exploration vessel had been traveling for 3 months through the outer rim sectors when the distress signal reached them. The message was broken and filled with static, but the words were clear enough. Titan Base mining colony was under attack. Lisa had heard the stories like everyone else in the galaxy. The Devourers were coming and nothing could stop them. These massive creatures stood 12 feet tall with armor that could deflect the most powerful energy weapons. Their mandibles could crush starship hulls like paper, and their appetite was endless. For 300 years they had swept across star systems, leaving nothing but dead rocks behind. The mining colony of Titan Base was supposed to be safe. It was far from the main shipping lanes and had little strategic value. The workers there dug for rare minerals in the asteroid belt and kept to themselves. But safety meant nothing to the Devourers. They consumed everything organic, breaking it down at the molecular level to fuel their endless expansion. Dr. Marcus Reed stood next to Lisa, studying the sensor readings. The xenobiologist had spent years researching the Devourers and their feeding patterns. Every world they touched became a wasteland stripped of all life down to the bacterial level. The sight of these dead worlds haunted everyone who saw them. Even the soil was gone, leaving only bare rock under alien skies. Commander Alex Torres joined them on the bridge, carrying a tactical report. The Ultron Empire had lost 3 entire fleets trying to stop a Devourer hunting pack. The technologically advanced Meridian Collective had retreated behind their fortress worlds. Even the warrior clans of the Outer Rim had given up and fled to the galactic core. Nothing the galaxy's greatest military forces tried had worked against these monsters. The horizon's edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Titan Base system. Immediately, the sensors lit up with contact signatures. 6 Devourer bioships hung in orbit around the mining colony like vultures waiting for their prey to die. The creatures' ships were living things grown rather than built. They pulsed with organic energy and their hulls rippled like breathing skin. Chief Engineer Kate Miller reported from the engine room that the ship's stealth systems were holding. The Devourers hadn't detected them yet, but they would have to move carefully. The alien creatures had evolved a hive mind intelligence that allowed them to share information instantly across vast distances. If one saw the human ship, they would all know about it within seconds. Navigator Emma Cross plotted a course toward the mining colony, staying behind the larger asteroids for cover. The colony's underground shelters were still intact, but the surface installations had been torn apart. The Devourers moved across the mining platforms like a plague of locusts, consuming everything in their path. Their feeding was systematic and thorough, leaving no organic matter behind. Lisa watched through the ship's telescopes as the creatures worked. They were even more terrifying than the report suggested. Each Devourer was a perfect killing machine, with 6 limbs that could serve as either legs or arms depending on the situation. Their chitinous armor was black as space and reflected no light. When they moved, it was with the fluid grace of natural predators that had never known fear. The mining colony's defensive systems had been useless against them. Energy weapons simply bounced off their armor plating, and kinetic rounds barely scratched their exoskeletons. The creatures seemed to absorb the energy from the weapons that hit them, growing stronger with each attack. Their mandibles could bite through reinforced steel, and their claws could tear apart starship hulls. Dr. Reed studied the creatures' behavior patterns through the ship's sensors. The Devourers weren't just mindless eating machines. They moved with purpose and intelligence, coordinating their attacks with military precision. Each creature knew exactly where the others were and what they were doing. Their hive mind made them nearly impossible to surprise or outmaneuver. The distress signal from Titan Base grew weaker as the colony's power systems failed. The survivors were trapped in the underground shelters, but the Devourers were already digging toward them. It was only a matter of time before they broke through the reinforced barriers and reached the humans inside. The creatures' feeding process was horrific to watch as they dissolved their prey with acidic enzymes before consuming the resulting organic soup. Commander Torres assembled a rescue team, but Lisa knew it was probably hopeless. The Devourers had never left survivors behind, and their feeding was too efficient to allow for escape. Still, they had to try. The mining colony held over 2,000 people, including families with children. They couldn't abandon them without a fight, even if the fight was hopeless. The galaxy's military strategists had studied the Devourers for decades without finding any weaknesses. The creatures adapted to every tactic and overcame every defense. Their expansion across the galaxy seemed unstoppable, and their hunger was endless. Some scientists believed they were driven by instinct alone, but Dr. Reed thought there was something more. The creatures' behavior suggested they were running from something rather than simply expanding their territory. The horizon's edge moved closer to the mining colony using the asteroid field for cover. Through the ship's sensors, they could see the full scope of the devastation. The Devourers had stripped every trace of organic matter from the surface, leaving only metal and rock behind. Even the colony's hydroponics bays had been consumed completely. The creatures were thorough in their destruction, leaving nothing behind that could support life. Lisa made the decision to attempt a rescue despite the odds. The human ship moved toward the colony's underground shelters where the survivors were trapped. The Devourers had detected the ship by now and were moving to intercept it. Their bioships pulsed with energy as they prepared to attack. The creature's hive mind allowed them to coordinate their assault with perfect timing. The battle for Titan Base was about to begin, and Lisa knew they were probably all going to die. But something deep in her mind suggested that maybe the Devourers weren't as unstoppable as everyone believed. There was something in their behavior that didn't fit the pattern of apex predators. They moved like hunters, but also like prey. Dr. Reed had noticed it too in his studies. The creatures showed signs of stress responses and defensive behaviors that suggested they had natural enemies somewhere in the galaxy. The horizon's edge prepared for combat as the Devourer bioships closed in. Lisa gripped the command chair arms and prepared to learn if humans could survive against the galaxy's greatest predators. The answer would determine not just the fate of Titan Base, but possibly the future of human expansion into the galaxy. The monsters were coming, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. Dr. Marcus Reed crouched beside the massive Devourer corpse in the ruins of Titan Base's main laboratory. The creature had died during the rescue operation 3 days ago when Commander Torres had managed to separate it from the hunting pack. Now Reed was conducting the first detailed examination of a Devourer body that hadn't been dissolved by the creature's own acidic death process. The xenobiologist's scanner hummed softly as he recorded measurements of the creature's exoskeleton. The chitinous armor was incredibly thick and showed microscopic scoring that didn't match any known weapon signatures. Reed adjusted his equipment and took another reading. The scarring patterns were old and had healed over multiple times, suggesting the creature had survived repeated attacks from something with claws or cutting implements. Captain Lisa Ward watched from the laboratory doorway as Reed worked. The rescue of Titan Base had been partially successful. They had saved 400 people from the underground shelters, but the cost had been high. The Horizon's Edge had taken heavy damage, and 2 crew members had been lost during the evacuation. The Devourers had fought with desperate intensity. That seemed unusual for creatures that normally showed no fear. Reed stood up and wiped his hands on a cleaning cloth. His analysis equipment beeped with completed readings, and he studied the results with growing excitement. The Devourer's nervous system showed clear signs of chronic stress responses. Chemical markers in the creature's blood indicated it had been living in a constant state of fear for years. This was not the biology of an apex predator, but of prey animals that lived under constant threat. Chief Engineer Kate Miller joined them in the laboratory carrying a datapad with repair estimates. The ship's hull had been breached in 3 places, and the main engines were running at 60% efficiency. But more importantly, she had been analyzing the Devourer bioships that had attacked them. The alien vessels showed similar stress indicators to the dead creature on the examination table. Commander Torres entered the laboratory with a tactical report. The surviving Devourers had fled the system immediately after the battle, instead of staying to consume the colony's remaining resources. This behavior was unprecedented in 300 years of recorded encounters. The creatures always finished feeding before moving on to new targets. Something had scared them away from Titan Base. The ship's communication array crackled with an incoming distress signal from the research station at Beta Centauri. The message was fragmented, but the words were clear enough. The station was under attack by a single devourer that was behaving strangely. Instead of leading a hunting pack, the creature was alone and seemed to be hiding rather than attacking. The researchers were requesting immediate assistance. Lisa made the decision to investigate despite the ship's damaged condition. Beta Centauri was only 2 days away at reduced speed, and the research station might provide more clues about the devourer's unusual behavior. Dr. Reed was particularly interested in studying a creature that was displaying defensive rather than aggressive patterns. The xenobiologists believed they were on the verge of a major discovery. The Horizon's Edge limped through hyperspace toward Beta Centauri with its crew working around the clock to repair the damage. Kate Miller had her engineering teams focused on the hull breaches while Torres drilled his security forces on new tactics. The battle at Titan Base had shown that conventional weapons were useless against devourer armor, but rapid movement and unpredictable attack patterns seemed to confuse the creatures. Hive mind, Navigator Emma Cross had been studying star charts of the galactic rim looking for patterns in devourer movements. Her analysis showed that the creature's expansion wasn't random as everyone had assumed. They were moving in a specific direction, avoiding certain systems and rushing through others without stopping to feed. It looked like they were running from something rather than conquering territory. The research station at Beta Centauri was a small facility built into an asteroid for studying deep space phenomena. When the Horizon's Edge arrived, the station appeared intact, but all communications were down. Sensor sweeps detected one devourer bioship hiding in the asteroid field nearby. The creature's vessel was powered down and showed no signs of aggressive behavior. It was hiding like a frightened animal. Torres led a boarding party to the research station wearing full combat armor and carrying the latest energy weapons. The facility's corridors were dark and silent, with no signs of the usual destruction that followed devourer attacks. The emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls as the team moved deeper into the station. Something was very wrong here. They found the devourer in the lower levels of the station, crouched in a storage bay surrounded by scattered equipment. The creature was massive even by devourer standards, but it wasn't attacking. Instead, it was pressed against the far wall with its armor plates extended in a defensive posture. Chemical sensors detected fear pheromones filling the air around it. The apex predator of the galaxy was terrified. Dr. Reed joined the boarding party wearing a protective suit and carrying his analysis equipment. The devourer watched him approach but made no aggressive moves. Its mandibles were closed and its limbs were pulled tight against its body. The creature was exhibiting classic prey behavior, trying to make itself as small as possible to avoid detection by a predator. But what could possibly hunt a devourer? The research station's archives contained fragmentary references to ancient galactic history. Emma Cross found star charts showing regions of space that even the devourers avoided. These were called the void sectors and were marked with warnings in dozens of languages. The archive spoke of silent hunters that stalked the darkness between stars. Most species considered these references to be mythology, but the evidence was mounting that something real lived in those empty regions. Reed discovered that the devourer in the storage bay had been hiding for weeks. The creature's stress levels were off the charts and its body was showing signs of starvation. It had been too afraid to hunt for food, preferring to hide rather than risk exposure. The xenobiologists realized they were looking at a creature that had encountered its natural predator and barely survived the experience. The ship's sensor array detected movement in the outer system. Something was approaching Beta Centauri from the direction of the void sectors, but the readings were inconsistent. The object appeared and disappeared from sensors as if it was phasing in and out of normal space. Whatever was coming had technology beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Lisa made the decision to evacuate the research station immediately. The devourer in the storage bay suddenly became agitated, sensing the approach of its predator. The creature began emitting distress calls that could be heard through the station's hull. Its terror was so intense that even the human crew could feel it through their protective suits. Something was coming, and it was something that made the galaxy's greatest predators flee in absolute terror. The horizon's edge left Beta Centauri with the research station's survivors just as the mysterious object arrived. Through the ship's rear sensors, they caught glimpses of something that defied description. It was darkness given form that moved through space without following the laws of physics. The Devourer's bioship was destroyed instantly without even having time to flee. The silent hunters were real, and they were hunting. The horizon's edge drifted through the restricted void sector, following the faint trail of Devourer pheromones that Dr. Reed had detected. Captain Lisa Ward had ordered the ship's stealth systems to maximum power as they entered the region that even the galaxy's apex predators avoided. The darkness between stars seemed deeper here, as if something was absorbing the light from distant suns. Navigator Emma Cross studied the sensor readings with growing unease. The space around them was filled with massive structures that defied easy description. They were clearly artificial, but built using technology that didn't match any known galactic civilization. The structures were arranged in patterns that stretched across light years, forming what looked like a vast hunting ground in the emptiness between solar systems. Chief Engineer Kate Miller reported that the ship's instruments were picking up gravitational anomalies throughout the region. The mysterious structures were generating artificial gravity wells that could trap anything that wandered too close. Energy readings showed that the entire area was networked together like a massive web designed to catch and hold prey. The void sector wasn't empty space, but a carefully constructed trap. Dr. Reed analyzed the pheromone trail they were following and discovered it was actually composed of multiple chemical signatures. Dozens of different Devourer hunting packs had passed through this region over the past several years. All of them had been moving in the same direction, fleeing toward the galactic core. The creatures were being herded like cattle toward some unknown destination. Commander Torres monitored the tactical sensors as they moved deeper into the void sector. The structures around them were becoming more active, with energy patterns that suggested they were scanning the human ship. Something was aware of their presence and was tracking their movement through the alien maze. The crew prepared for contact with whatever controlled this region of space. The first Shadowkin appeared without warning, materializing from the darkness between two of the massive structures. It was a writhing mass of living shadow that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. The creature's form shifted constantly, making it impossible to focus on any specific details. Energy readings showed it was composed of matter that didn't follow conventional physics. Lisa watched through the ship's telescopes as the Shadowkin moved through space without any visible means of propulsion. It flowed like liquid darkness, studding the human vessel with alien intelligence. The creature made no aggressive moves, but its presence filled the crew with an instinctive dread that seemed to bypass rational thought. This was something that evolved to be feared by other predators. The Shadowkin began to phase in and out of normal space, appearing and disappearing in different locations around the ship. Reed's instruments could barely track its movements, and the readings made no sense. The creature seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, using the spaces between reality to move instantly across vast distances. It was the perfect hunter, invisible and untouchable. More Shadowkin appeared from the depths of the void sector, drawn by the presence of the human ship. They moved in patterns that suggested coordinated intelligence, but without any visible communication. The creatures were studying the horizon's edge with the same careful attention that a predator gives to unfamiliar prey. They were deciding whether the humans posed a threat. Emma Cross discovered that the gravitational anomalies were actually sophisticated traps designed to capture ships and hold them in place. The Shadowkin had been using these devices to hunt Devourers for millions of years. Any creature that entered the void sector would be caught in the gravity nets and processed by the ancient hunters. The entire region was a killing ground on a galactic scale. The crew found evidence of previous battles scattered throughout the hunting ground. The remains of Devour bioships floated in the gravity wells, slowly being broken down by the Shadowkin's processing systems. The alien hunters didn't just kill their prey, they consumed them completely, leaving no trace behind. The efficiency was terrifying in its completeness. Dr. Reed made a disturbing discovery about the Shadowkin's hunting patterns. The creatures weren't just randomly killing Devours, they were herding them toward specific targets. Analysis of the pheromone trails showed that the Shadowkin were driving the Devours toward the most populated regions of the galaxy. The ancient hunters were using their prey as weapons against younger civilizations. Kate Miller detected massive energy buildups in the structures around them. The Shadowkin were preparing to activate their trap systems to capture the human ship. The crew had minutes before the gravity wells would lock onto them and drag them into the processing chambers. Lisa ordered emergency power to the engines. As they prepared to flee from the ancient hunters, the horizon's edge accelerated toward the edge of the void sector with Shadowkin in pursuit. The creatures moved through space like living nightmares, keeping pace with the ship despite its maximum speed. They seemed to be testing the humans, measuring their capabilities and reactions. The chase felt like a predator playing with its prey. Before the final strike, Torres activated the ship's defense systems, but the weapons had no effect on the Shadowkin. Energy beams passed through them harmlessly, and kinetic rounds seemed to strike nothing but empty space. The creatures existed partially outside normal reality, making them immune to conventional attacks. They were the ultimate predators evolved. Beyond the reach of their prey, the ship's communication array suddenly crackled with an incoming signal. One of the Shadowkin was attempting to make contact using frequencies that shouldn't have been possible. The alien hunter's voice was like whispers in the void, speaking in concepts rather than words. It was trying to communicate something important about the nature of the cosmic hunt. Reed managed to decode fragments of the transmission. Using the ship's linguistic computers, the Shadowkin was warning them about something even more dangerous than the Devourers. Deep in the galactic void, something ancient was stirring in response to the disruption of the cosmic balance. The hunters had been containing a threat that made even their species afraid. The horizon's edge broke free from the void sector, with the Shadowkin allowing their escape. The ancient hunters had learned what they needed to know about human capabilities, and had made their decision. The crew realized they had been tested and somehow passed the examination. The Shadowkin had found something in humanity that interested them, enough to spare their lives. Lisa ordered the ship to set course for the galactic core, following the same route the Devourers had taken. The crew now understood they were caught in the middle of a cosmic hunt that had been going on for millions of years. The Shadowkin were driving the Devourers towards something, and the humans needed to discover what that destination was before it was too late. The sensor arrays detected massive movement in the deep void behind them. Something was responding to the Shadowkin's activities, and it was heading toward the populated regions of the galaxy. The ancient hunters had been containing a threat that made even their species desperate. The cosmic hunt was entering its final phase, and humanity was about to learn what horrors lived in the spaces between the stars. Dr. Marcus Reed stared at the genetic analysis results on his laboratory screen with growing amazement. The data he had compiled about human evolution was revealing patterns that seemed impossible. Earth's fossil record showed that humanity's ancestors had survived multiple mass extinction events that had wiped out larger and more physically powerful species. The pattern was consistent across millions of years of planetary history. Captain Lisa Ward joined Reed in the laboratory to review his findings. The xenobiologist had been working for days analyzing human DNA and comparing it to the genetic structures of other galactic species. What he had discovered was that humans possessed a unique combination of traits that made them natural survivors. Their brains were wired for pattern recognition and tactical thinking in ways that no other species had developed. The analysis showed that Earth had been an unusually dangerous world throughout its history. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and predator evolution had created an environment where only the most adaptable creatures could survive. Generation after generation of human ancestors had been selected for intelligence, cooperation, and the ability to overcome seemingly impossible odds, Chief Engineer Kate Miller reported that the ship's long-range sensors were detecting massive movement in the deep void. The Shadowkin structures were shifting position, and energy readings suggested they were preparing for something significant. The ancient hunters were mobilizing their forces on a scale that hadn't been seen in millions of years. Whatever was coming was big enough to threaten even their advanced civilization. Commander Torres analyzed the tactical implications of Reed's genetic research. Humans had evolved on a world where predators were constantly adapting to overcome their defenses. This had created a species that was naturally skilled at identifying weaknesses and exploiting them. The human military advantage wasn't superior technology but superior thinking. They could analyze any threat and develop countermeasures. Navigator Emma Cross discovered that the devourer pheromone trails were converging on a specific region of space near the galactic core. The creatures were being driven toward the ancient homeworld of the Shadowkin. Analysis of the star charts showed that this system had been the center of a vast galactic civilization millions of years ago. Something had destroyed that civilization and turned its creators into hunters. The ship's communication array received another transmission from the Shadowkin. This time the signal was clearer and Reed's linguistic computers could decode more of the message. The ancient hunter was dying and wanted to share information about the cosmic threat. The crew prepared to receive what might be the most important intelligence in galactic history. The dying Shadowkin's message revealed the terrible truth about the cosmic hunt. The creatures that everyone called devourers were not the real threat. They were refugees fleeing from something even worse. Deep in the galactic void, an ancient race called the Void Spawn had been sleeping for millions of years. The Shadowkin had been herding the devourers toward their homeworld as a final, desperate attempt to contain the awakening threat. Dr. Reed realized that the Shadowkin had been studying human evolution and had reached the same conclusions he had. Humanity represented something unique in the galaxy. They were the product of a world where survival required constant adaptation and tactical thinking. The ancient hunters believed that humans might be the key to defeating the Void Spawn. When they finally awakened, the revelation came with a terrible cost. The Shadowkin explained that the Void Spawn were not just another predator species. They were entropy-given form, creatures that existed to unmake reality itself. Their awakening would begin the final phase of universal decay. The galaxy had, perhaps months before the ancient threat emerged from its slumber in the deep void. Lisa studied the star charts, showing the location of the Void Spawn's sleeping chambers. The coordinates were in a region of space that appeared empty on conventional sensors, but showed massive gravitational anomalies. The creatures were hibernating in pocket dimensions that existed between normal space and the cosmic void. Their dreams were already beginning to affect reality around them. The Shadowkin's message included detailed information about their own species' history. They had once been the dominant civilization in the galaxy with technology that seemed like magic to younger species. But the Void Spawn had awakened once before and had nearly destroyed everything. The survivors had transformed themselves into hunters, dedicating their existence to preventing another awakening. Torres analyzed the tactical data about the Void Spawn and realized that conventional weapons would be useless against them. The creatures existed partially outside normal physics, making them immune to energy weapons and kinetic attacks. They could only be defeated by beings that could think in patterns they couldn't predict. The ancient threat had never faced an enemy like humanity. The dying Shadowkin transmitted the location of a hidden facility where the ancient hunters had been developing weapons specifically designed to fight the Void Spawn. The facility was located in a system that had been erased from all galactic star charts. Getting there would require the humans to navigate through regions of space that had been deliberately hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Reed made a disturbing discovery about the timing of the Void Spawn's awakening. The creatures were responding to the disruption of the cosmic balance caused by the Shadowkin's final push to contain the Devourer threat. The ancient hunters had been forced to choose between allowing the Devourers to consume the galaxy or risking the awakening of something Even worse, they had chosen the lesser evil. The ship's sensors detected changes in the fabric of space itself. Reality was beginning to warp around the void spawn's sleeping chambers as their dreams grew stronger. Entire star systems were starting to fade from existence as the creature's influence spread. The galaxy was running out of time. Kate Miller reported that the ship's engines were detecting strange readings in hyperspace. The normal laws of physics were becoming unreliable as the void spawn's awakening affected the fundamental structure of reality. Navigation was becoming increasingly difficult as space itself began to change. The ancient threat was stirring, and its mere presence was unmaking the universe. Lisa made the decision to head for the hidden Shadowkin facility. The crew needed to learn everything they could about fighting the void spawn before the creatures fully awakened. The human ship set course for the coordinates provided by the dying ancient hunter. They were heading into the unknown to face a threat that had nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. The Horizons Edge entered hyperspace with reality warping around them. The journey to the hidden facility would take them through regions of space that existed on the border between existence and the void. The crew prepared for their greatest challenge, knowing that the fate of the galaxy might depend on their ability to master weapons designed by a civilization that had fought gods and lost. The Horizon's Edge shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near the hidden Shadowkin facility. Captain Lisa Ward watched through the viewport as the ancient structure materialized from the distorted space around it. The facility was massive, beyond comprehension, built into what appeared to be a pocket dimension that existed between normal space and the cosmic void. Reality itself seemed uncertain here. Dr. Marcus Reed monitored the sensor readings as they approached the facility. The structure was generating fields that stabilized the warp space around it, creating a small bubble of normal physics in the chaos. The technology was beyond anything humanity had encountered, but the readings suggested it was failing. The facility had been operating for millions of years, and its systems were finally breaking down. Commander Torres led the boarding party through the facility's corridors, which were filled with weapons and equipment designed to fight enemies that existed outside normal reality. The ancient hunters had spent eons developing countermeasures against the void spawn. Each device was a masterpiece of engineering that combined science and something that approached magic in its complexity. The facility's central chamber contained a massive tactical display showing the current state of the galaxy. The void spawn were awakening faster than the Shadowkin had predicted. 3 of the ancient creatures had already emerged from their sleeping chambers and were beginning to unmake reality around them. Entire star systems were fading from existence as the creature's influence spread. Chief Engineer Kate Miller studied the Shadowkin weapons with growing amazement. The devices were designed to work with human neural patterns rather than against them. The ancient hunters had been preparing for humanity's arrival for millions of years. Every weapon and piece of equipment had been calibrated to work with human brain chemistry and reflexes. The facility's archives contained detailed information about the void spawn's weaknesses. The creatures were vulnerable to patterns of thought that they couldn't predict or understand. Their existence was based on entropy and decay, but human creativity and adaptability represented something they had never encountered. The key to defeating them was to fight in ways that defied their expectations. Navigator Emma Cross discovered that the facility contained star charts showing the current location of all awakened void spawn. The creatures were moving toward the galactic core, following the same path as the Devourers. The ancient hunters' plan was becoming clear. They intended to use the Devourers as a distraction while human forces equipped with Shadowkin weapons attacked the void spawn directly. The ship's communication array received a priority transmission from the galactic core. The Devourer hunting packs had reached the populated systems and were engaging in massive battles with the combined fleets of the galaxy's major civilizations. But the battles were going differently than anyone expected. The Devourers were fighting with desperate courage rather than their usual calculated aggression. Reed realized that the Devourers were no longer fleeing from the Shadowkin but were preparing to make their final stand against the void spawn. The creatures had been driven to the galactic core where they would serve as the first line of defense against the awakening ancient threat. The cosmic hunt had been orchestrated to place the galaxy's greatest predators exactly where they were needed most. The horizon's edge left the facility equipped with weapons that seemed to bend reality around them. The crew had learned to use devices that could strike at enemies existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The technology was integrated with human neural patterns, allowing the weapons to be guided by intuition and creativity rather than conventional targeting systems, TORES, coordinated with the Galactic Defense Forces as they prepared for the final battle. The various species that had been driven to the core by the Devourer threat were now working together against a common enemy. The ancient hunters had forced the galaxy's civilizations to unite in the face of ultimate extinction. The Shadowkin's plan was working perfectly. The first engagement with the Void Spawn took place in the outer system of the galactic core. The creature that emerged from the pocket dimension was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was entropy given form, a living negation of existence that unmade reality simply by being present. Conventional weapons passed through it harmlessly, but the Shadowkin devices struck home. Lisa led the human forces in their first battle against the Void Spawn using tactics that no other species would have considered. Instead of trying to destroy a creature, they focused on confusing it. Human unpredictability and creativity disrupted the ancient threat's ability to process reality. The Void Spawn faltered when faced with patterns of thought it couldn't understand. The battle raged across multiple dimensions as the human forces used their new weapons to strike at the Void Spawn's existence itself. The creatures were powerful beyond imagination, but they had been sleeping for millions of years. They were unprepared for an enemy that could think in ways they had never encountered. Human adaptability was proving to be the ultimate weapon. Reed discovered that the Void Spawn were not just individual creatures but part of a collective consciousness that spanned the cosmic void. Defeating them required disrupting their shared awareness and forcing them to fight as separate entities. The human forces began using psychological warfare tactics that had been developed on Earth to break apart the ancient collective. The Devourers joined the battle against their ancient enemies with a fury that surprised everyone. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were now fighting to protect it from something even worse. The cosmic hunt had transformed from a pursuit into an alliance. The galaxy's greatest predators were standing together against the ultimate threat. Kate Miller coordinated the technical aspects of the battle using human engineering skills to modify the Shadowkin weapons for maximum effectiveness. The ancient devices were powerful, but they had been designed for a different kind of warfare. Human innovation was improving them in ways their creators had never imagined. The final battle took place in the system where the Void Spawn had first awakened. The human forces led a coordinated assault that combined conventional tactics with weapons that operated outside normal physics. The key was to attack the creature's ability to process reality rather than their physical forms. Human creativity was unmaking the ancient threat's existence. Lisa stood on the bridge watching as the last of the Void Spawn was defeated. The creature's destruction created a cascade effect that sent the remaining ancient threats back into their deep sleep. The galaxy was safe, but the cost had been enormous. Entire star systems had been lost and billions of lives had been sacrificed to achieve victory. The aftermath of the battle saw the establishment of a new galactic order. The humans had proven themselves to be the ultimate predators not through strength or technology, but through their ability to think in ways that no other species could match. The Shadowkin formally recognized humanity as the galaxy's new apex predators and guardians. Against future threats, the Devourers ceased their expansion and began to settle into more sustainable patterns of existence. The creatures that had once terrorized the galaxy became its protectors, working alongside human forces to watch for signs of new threats. The cosmic hunt had ended with an alliance that would reshape the galaxy's future. Dr. Reed established research stations throughout the galaxy to study the remains of the Void Spawn and develop defenses against future awakenings. The threat was contained but not eliminated. The ancient creatures still slept in the cosmic void and would eventually stir again. Humanity had become the galaxy's eternal guardians against the darkness between the stars. The horizon's edge received a final transmission from Earth reporting strange readings in the deep void. Something even older than the void spawn was stirring in response to the recent battle. The humans had proven themselves as the galaxy's apex predators, but their greatest challenges still lay ahead in the infinite darkness of space.